We all hail from some strong women. Women who ran the farm, creatively fed the children, although the money was short. Women who picked cotton for the master, or women who braved a long migration with the hope of a better life for their family. I have some incredibly strong women in my lineage. My mother, of course, but also my grandma Winnie, one of two girls of 7 kids, all growing up on a farm in Alpena, Michigan. My Aunt Naftel, who endured an abusive father and fought breast cancer while teaching students proper grammar and how to enunciate their words. Naftel's Aunt Johnny Dance, who I took as my namesake, who was named Johnny because her father wanted a son, and who became a missionary in the bayou of Mississippi when women were expected to get married, have children, and tend the home. It turns out that UUCP has a long legion of strong women in our history as well. And I think it's fitting that we tell their story and tell the legacy that they left us on our last Sunday of our Stewardship Month and the last week of Women's History Month. I hope to do a service on our own UUCP history at least once a year. Last year, you might remember I told of how resilience is baked into our DNA from our congregation's beginnings and multiple shunnings due to our radical beliefs during the McCarthy era. This year, we're talking about women because I was struck by how much of our early history was created by women. Now, I could not do any of this without the help and deep knowledge of our history by Charlotte Carl Mitchell. Her history is so well documented and so eloquently stated that these stories jump from our pages. You can find all of this history on our website. Thank you, Charlotte. And please know that today we have a much broader understanding of gender and what it means to identify as a woman. I do wish that our forebears had the same opportunity that we have today to talk about our children, about sexual orientation, gender identity, and how the gender binary is a societal construct that does not serve many members of our society. UUCP was founded by a woman. Isabel Johnson, who started this church, and it was a church at the time, the first Unitarian Church of Phoenix, the first Unitarian church in the entire state of Arizona. The legend that we like to tell is that our congregation was born when Isabel Johnson put an ad in the local newspaper inviting any religious liberals who happened to live in the area to meet up in her living room the following Sunday, and 7 people showed up. The truth is that in 1946, Isabel had written the Unitarian Association about starting a church here in Phoenix after she had moved from the Midwest, and she didn't find one here. She put that ad in the paper, and the Reverend Lon Ray Call, minister at large for the Unitarian Association, came to Phoenix for 3 months to be the minister. Reverend Call asked if Isabel would act as the congregation's secretary. She had a strong feeling that the success of this fledgling church depended very largely on these organizational skills. She was very familiar with building grassroots movements already because she had been involved in the early days of the women's suffrage movement. So she knew the power of organizing women and the impact that they could have. Isabel Johnson is credited as our founder. She was also the president of the board in 1950. And in order to find a church, like to get it started, especially a liberal church in a developing city, she must have had determination, organization, a lot of diplomacy, and quite a bit of spunk. Anyone figure it out yet? Yes, our beloved Johnson Room is named after Isabel Johnson. It was dedicated on her 90th birthday in 1970 with Isabel there, surrounded by her large family and a very grateful congregation. She died 6 years later. In the words of our historian, Charlotte Carl Mitchell, if Isabel could have said to have birthed the church, her daughter, Frances Bishop, could have said to have mothered the church during its toddler years. 3 generations of these women lived together without any men in Phoenix. So Isabel and Frances's daughter. When the church was founded in 1946, Isabel was a widow, Frances was divorced, and Frances's daughter, Joanne Locke, all lived together. Frances was a teacher doing graduate work in education, psychology, and sociology. She was a counselor in the Phoenix school system. On the side, she did woodworking. She loved building furniture. She did remarry a gentleman that she met during the formation of this congregation, one of the many relationships started at UUCP. She also was board president for 2 years that the congregation didn't have a minister and made its first move to another building. It could have fallen apart if she hadn't been so competent. In these early days, another very important group of strong women was organized, the Women's Alliance. I've heard about the Alliance so many times. They had a bazaar that they planned all year, and their fundraisers kept the congregation afloat for many years. Okay, cool, Reverend Christine, got it. Our founding was basically by an amazing woman, Isabel Johnson, and her amazing daughter, Frances Bishop. How cool. Strong women, mother and daughter. Awesome. But that's not it. Our congregation wouldn't be where it is now without another amazing, strong mother-daughter pair. You see, in our first location in 1947 was at the Kenilworth School on 5th Avenue. But if you remember from that service last year, the McCarthyites thought we were too radical for them and asked us to leave. So we went to the Valley Garden Center in Encanto Park, and the McCarthy folks chased us down there. We got kicked out of there too. Then to the YWCA, and yeah, that only lasted 3 months. We got kicked out of there too. 3 locations in 5 years. So imagine you're trying to start a church. You keep having to change locations. The community is against you. These folks were tired and worn down, and the church nearly disbanded over this issue, but also over arguments of God, of course. Until here come another mother-daughter pair, Mimi Muth and her daughter, Erica Michaud. They owned property at Camelback and 6th Street, and they loaned it to the church so they couldn't be kicked out again. In 45 days, they built a 1,300-foot building that could seat 125 people for, guess how much? $1,500. And it was because the 87 men, women, and children all worked to build the building. The congregation built the building. Now, here's what I find fascinating about our history. Erica's husband is mentioned in this story because he designed the plans for the building. But it was very clear in our history that the land was owned by Mimi and Erica. Without these 2 women, we wouldn't have had a home, and our history most likely would have stopped there. This is our legacy. These women worked so we could be here right now. They had a vision of what we could be and what we could do, and we would not exist if they were not here. And not just these women. We have the great privilege to hear from some of the women who have been at UUCP since the 1960s. Combined, 3 of them have more than 150 years of UUCP experience between them. And here's what they remember of the legacy that women left us here at UUCP.
My first thought in coming to the church was, I don't have to lie anymore.
Lie about what? Tell me about that.
Lie about my beliefs.
Mm.
Lie about the fact that I did not believe in God. And that was such a relief to me. It's always hard to get, difficult, I should say, to get the Unitarians to pledge what they should.
And tell me about that, because this is the last week of our pledge drive. Like, tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, I think now that we're in a pandemic, people are not spending money on everything. So, and I think they're beginning to realize the pandemic has changed the thoughts. I've been surprised that the pledges are coming in so well. Because we are really needed. It seems like every time there's a crisis and justice, you know, like when that law 1070 came out of our legislature, people responded to that. So I think Unitarians have a reason, or they feel necessary to have a crisis to actually get in and do something. You know, things have changed, but still, I think in the outside world, it's women are finally being recognized as having a brain.
Well, I can tell you that when I first moved here with my family in 1960, just to be a member or have any association with UUCP, which of course it wasn't called then, but anyhow, was amazing and brave. And coming from the East, I'd always been, never thought of Unitarianism, which it was then, as being anything other than strong people who thought for themselves. When I got here, I discovered that Unitarians were not necessarily well accepted in the community. They were suspect of a lot of things, including communism, and as you know, had been driven out of other locations. Never crossed my mind, but along with many people who were also associated with ACLU and Planned Parenthood, and I'm trying to think of other organizations in the community that were suspect. I found that when I identified myself as a Unitarian, either I would get acceptance by a few people, or many people would really look askance at, you know, well, you're a member of that group. I don't know that I want to be close to you or even get to know you very well. So we were a rarefied group right from the start. And yeah, I was pretty subversive myself when I looked at the Christmas box recipients that went through our elementary school. I discovered not everybody, majority had at least 6 children. And I thought, what these people need for Christmas is some information on birth control. Which now I'm not a eugenics person, but I definitely felt that. So I got Planned Parenthood literature and stuffed it into the boxes, and the principal found me out. He agreed, but he had to chastise me for doing that because that was political, and it was. I know it was, but that's how I felt.
I love it. But it's directed, slightly subversive, and understanding what your values were. I love that story, Sally.
Well, it was touch and go for a while, but they didn't kick me out of the PTA.
Well, do you know the name Agnes Erickson?
Do not know that. Tell me about her.
She was the first woman who was president of our congregation.
And what was she like?
Well, that's a hard thing for me too. I was new to the congregation at that time, and so she was She was a very purposeful woman, and you could say that about all of those women.
Now, another thing that I know about you, Elaine, is that you and your husband helped found the foundation, the endowment.
That is correct. I was very, very tired of this poor everything. We never had enough money to meet the budget to pay the minister. And so
what did you want to do?
we started the foundation.
Because you didn't want to hear the story that we couldn't afford it anymore?
Well, I'm just not sure. I'm 97.
I know, it's amazing, Elaine. You're doing great.
Well, that's a big number. That's a big number.
Yes.
I don't know how old you are. Now that's nervy of me.
Oh, no, totally fine. I'm 54.
With your perfect age.
I am more than half, but I am not anywhere close to 97. I'm feeling old. I can't even imagine what 97 feels like.
It was pretty good.
Good.
It does feel good. I'm having some more fun because I was more of a worrier than I am now.
It is. And I think in actually a number of ways it will make us stronger. I think at the very least, everyone has certainly understood how important community is during this time and being together.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, there have been many strong women, and they have not the only ones that pulled this church together, but and doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
Susan Morris and Susan Goldsmith and all wonderful people.
Yeah. Okay, tell me you're not a little teary after seeing all of that. Thank you, Joan and Sally, Elaine. Thank you so much for everything. I want to give a special shout out to what Elaine Warner talked about, the endowment named the UU Foundation of Phoenix. Our foundation now has over $1 million, makes a healthy pledge to the congregation each year, and has loaned the congregation money for our recent construction project, and is still dreaming about how we can boldly support a radical future for Unitarian Universalism here in Phoenix. These stories matter because all of these people dreamed of a future for Unitarian Universalism in Phoenix. They couldn't even dream in 1946 or 1957 that we'd be here 70 years later having an entire campus and that we'd be having worship on computers. Can you even imagine what they'd think of that? So at the end of our stewardship month, the question is to you is what legacy are we leaving? What will the folks who come 70 years from now think about what we did in this time? Who will they be talking about and why? We are the ones they were creating this for. And we are building it for our children's children. And this is how it works. We come from these amazing women. Knowing our history, we can be dedicated to building a better future. Knowing who we come from, we have intentions of honoring their legacy and building our own. May it be so. May it be so through our pledges, through our actions, through our love, through our intentions. May it be so.